Robin and Bodania and her team. It's just been an incredible event here today. It's an honor to be part of it and learning from every one of you too. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity. It's something that I've been focused on for the past 20 years. And a question I get all the time is, what's the one thing I could do, right, to be better at cybersecurity? And a lot of people say, well, there's no silver bullet. But I think there is a silver bullet. And what it is in order to be good at cybersecurity, both within your corporation and your person, is to become a hacker. And that's what I'm going to try to convince you today that you all need to be. And we're going to show you a little hack as well. So my day job is not security. I'm currently chairman of Shuttle, which is Earth's first space marketplace. So if you'd like to go to space, come and talk to me after. Now, most of you are probably not cybersecurity experts as your day job either. However, I think it's something that we all need to bring into every one of our jobs. Now, I've been lucky enough to spend the last 20 years being educated by the very best hackers in the world. DEF CON is the largest hacker gathering. It takes place in Vegas every year. I think we had over 30,000 people show up. We don't really know the number. It's cash only at the door. And then 9 years ago, I started Roots Asylum, which is the kids' version of DEF CON. And this year, we had about 1,000 attendees, also in Vegas, teaching all of the kids how to hack. And I think the lessons and the things that we've taught the kids are things that all of you need to know. And what you're going to learn from this presentation is that cybersecurity and becoming a hacker should be your #1 priority for 2019, no matter what your job is. This is very important stuff here. Now, some of the things that we teach the kids how to do are how to eavesdrop on your cell phone calls. We use a device called a Nico Sell, which you can get for about $300. Fits in the back of your backpack. And with that, we can listen to your text messages, your cell phone calls, intercept them, change them. We also taught the kids how to turn on your interfacing camera on your smartphone, your laptop, or your TV. This is something we taught the kids how to do in a half an hour. Now, some of you might have stickers on your camera and you get made fun of for being paranoid. Well, you're not being paranoid by covering that up. We also taught the kids 2 years ago how to hack the Tesla. And what's really cool about the Tesla is actually the only car at the time that could be updated so that we could fix the problem as well as break it. In most of the car hacks that are used, you're attacking a PLC, which is a programmable logic computer. Well, programmable logic computers are also used in roller coasters that are connected to cellular connection at the back end. So we showed the kids how to control roller coasters with their iPhones. Well, what the scarier part about that is PLCs are also used throughout the entire North American electric grid. And we taught the kids how to shut off the power grid with an iPhone. We also taught the kids how to crash planes. Many of you had to fly here. You have to go through all of this security to get there. But the funny thing is the communication system that's used to direct all of the planes is unauthenticated and unencrypted. It's wide open. And we taught the kids how to send 50 planes, virtual planes, into the sky and cause complete chaos. That's how the entire travel system in the world is run. One of the most important lessons that I learned as a hacker when I was, this is probably 15 years ago, is how to break into back doors. This is a really important lesson for a lot of the debates that are happening today, because as soon as you know that you can break into a back door, you understand that back doors can be used by good guys and bad guys. And that's why we can't have any holes in our systems for the government. We also teach the kids how to lockpick. This is actually a great first place to start if you want to learn how to hack. Most kids from the age of 5 up can learn how to break into the common front door in about 10 minutes. This is a really good metaphor for all of security. And this is why we start the kids here, because a lock can be broken into. It's just how easy and how much time it takes. And that's all of security is the same way. One of my very favorite hacks at DEF CON every year is Chris Hagnaggy runs the Social Engineering Village. And this is a place where they have phone banks set up, and you get to listen to people con, really. And they're only using the phone and Facebook. And with those two pieces of information, they're able to get 100% of the targets 100% of the time. These are targets like really big companies. Your people will give away that information. And the information that you give away on Facebook can be used against you. You know, how did you meet your lover, right? You like to go the same place on vacation. You like to read the same books. It's really easy to con people using this. So what do you learn from the hackers? That no security is 100%. Everything can be hacked. By kids. So we could all be filthy rich, right? Let's just all go be hackers. The world is wide open out there. But as Peter mentioned, I think it was Peter mentioned yesterday in the opening speech, with great power comes great responsibility. We learned that from Spider-Man 1, but this is something that we teach all the kids. So there's an honor code, obviously, that goes with all of this. Some people might say, wow, it's pretty irresponsible for you to teach kids how to hack the power grid with an iPhone. Say, well, I think it's more irresponsible of us as society that I can teach kids how to hack the power grid with an iPhone. We shouldn't be in this position. And if we understood how precarious of a position we are in right now, we'd all be freaking out. But luckily, hackers have an amazing code of ethics. It's just a really great group of people. We give away more blood than the doctors and nurses conference combined. So the community is very strong. And all of the attacks that I mentioned this morning, every one of them was disclosed with responsible disclosure, which means we went to the vendor ahead of time and we gave them proper time to fix the bug before we announced it publicly. And so hackers are really your superheroes. They're the ones that are here to help you make sure that all the systems are secure in the world. They're your watchdogs, right? And they really have to put themselves out on the line to do this kind of thing. You need lawyers to talk about this kind of thing. And so I think another good way to really understand hackers is to know some of the books and movies that we like. This is kind of a fun way to get into the hacker mindset. And one of the most influential books is Starfish and a Spider. This was written by Rod Beckstrom, who was the former CEO of ICANN. He was also the US Cyber Czar for several years. And his theory is that the reason why Anonymous and hackers are so strong and winning today is because they are designed like a starfish. Corporations and governments are command and control, and they're designed like a spider. The difference is you cut off a spider's leg, it's going to die. Not so with a starfish. One of my favorite authors, Cory Doctorow, he's written dozens of books at this point, but Little Brother's one of my favorites. It's a great place to start. And what's amazing about this book is it's super entertaining, but all the technical details in there are real. And the characters are actually built off of real people as well, too. So while you're reading this book, you're actually learning about hacking. Most hackers' favorite movie is probably Ghost in the Shell. There's a new version out right now, but the original cartoon came out about 25 years ago, about the time that DEF CON started, really. Black Mirror is a really interesting Netflix series where they take an idea and they extrapolate it to an extent into the future. My favorite, and you can look at them not in order, my favorite one is Hated by a Nation, where they show how these nanobots have a back door and end up going crazy. Mr. Robot won an Emmy 2 years ago. And it's actually the first time that there's been a TV show where hackers were pleased by how they were portrayed. The reason why is Mark Rogers, who runs security for DEF CON, is actually the technical advisor here. And a lot of hackers work on this program. So the code that you see on the screen and the attacks that you see in Mr. Robot are real. For instance, that femto hacking with the cell phones that I talked about earlier, that's in Mr. Robot. And actually, all the code on the screen is real. So what you've learned from hackers is really the reason why they're here to help build the systems instead of break them is because they understand that the web is our greatest global resource. And it's something that we all need to protect. Because we're all connected now. The borders aren't the same. So if something happens on the other end of the world, it's going to impact us here too. And since we're at Singularity University, I like to to draw the analogy between the internet and the brain. And my theory is that we've kind of, spent the last 10 years building one half of the brain, which I'll call the public web. But until we have an intelligent society, we need to build the other half of the brain, which is the private web. And then those two can work together. And so that's what the next 10 years will be. So along those lines, what all of us should be fighting for, what we're doing every day, in order to have a strong internet, an intelligent web, is we need to have private communications, freedom of information, control of personal data, and ownership of assets. This is what everyone deserves, no matter where you are across the frontier. The world needs good role models for this. The US is faltering a little bit these days, but it's still my best role model really goes back to George Washington. And George Washington had a theory. He said, I think if we give society private communication and freedom of information, that's how we build a strong society with strong social discourse. No leader had ever given away this kind of power today. Before that, the Brits were spying and controlling everything that their citizens saw. But this did work. This did create a strong society. Now, I keep a track of encryption around the world and where it's illegal and where it's not. Blue is obviously where it's not illegal. I think it's really interesting to map this next to the democracy map. And what you see is the kind of places that control encryption are totalitarian regimes. So it's not something we want to do. Encryption gives power to the people, and it is super powerful. It's actually, I'm technically an arms dealer with Wickr. Encryption is considered an arm. But encryption is not a crime. It's a human right. It's a vital human right, and it's actually protected by the Universal Human Rights Doctrine with Article 12 and Article 19. And we're lucky enough in the United States to have the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment that also help to protect this right. But no matter what country you're in, it's important for you to support strong encryption and stop mass surveillance, because this is how every one of us is going to prevent authoritarianism and stop terrorism. Now, maybe I've scared you a little bit by some of the hacks that we do, so I'm going to try to empower you and give you some tips so that you can become more secure. Kind of got a mixture in here between personal and corporate. I think it's really important to understand that privacy policies have become ownership policies. So every company that you're importing your data in, they own everything you do. Your conversations with your mother are put into a database. You're giving those away. You as companies should not be taking advantage of this privacy policy to have it as an ownership policy, because it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. Personal information is hazardous waste. It's very hard to keep safe, and it's going to cause your company a lot of problems. Let's talk a little bit about the Tinder, for instance. I use this with my teenage daughter a lot, but how many of you know that Tinder has an internal database where they keep track of your fuckability rating, your desirability rating, your activity rating? What happens when that database gets leaked, right? Pretty scary stuff. Something else that we're always leaving out there as well, and that corporations are also collecting a lot that does not count as private information but should be, is geotags. These tell you where you live, where your children are, who you're sleeping with, when and where. This is personal information, right? If you're keeping this information at your corporation on your customers, you need to consider it private. Also, metadata is not protected under personal information. Now, metadata means who you're talking to, when, and how often. Encryption will not protect you from metadata, right? This is the networking traffic going on. Well, General Hayden, who was director of the CIA and the NSA, says we kill on metadata alone. So who you're talking to, when, and how often can be seen by anyone looking at the network. Google searches, it's just amazing how many people put things in Google searches. Again, this is all going in a database. Actually, if you go to Google headquarters, you can see the searches flying by. But I think at a corporation, you don't think about, should I be careful doing my IP searches on Google? Am I eventually competing with Google? And also, I don't know how many of you remember the AOL breach a long time ago, but all the searches of individuals were posted online. And you were able to out people maybe that were married, that were obviously gay, for instance. You know, this is the kind of thing that's going to come out in searches. And Google has an amazing security team, one of the best in the world, but every database will be breached eventually and will be put online for your peers and your friends to search for. Email servers, too, are a place that people trust way too much. You know, we've learned some lessons recently with emails, but you need to think about the information that's put on that server and what's stored there. And think about that database being put on the web, again, for all of your friends and your competitors to search. This will happen. It's happened to a lot of my friends. Health startups are particularly scary these days. I don't know how many of you out there have a health startup, but you know, I go around and ask them questions, or the genome companies, and say, you know, what are you doing with all this personal information that you're keeping, that you're in charge of, that you're the steward of? I'm a startup. I don't have time to think about that yet, right? All these little companies collecting data on you. It's really scary. So as a corporation, there's a couple of things that you should be doing that most of you are not doing yet. First one is continuous pen testing. So you should be hiring hackers to hack you. You could start even with a social engineering hack. You could call Chris Hagnaggy and pay him to social engineer your company. Gets everyone on guard right away. It's an amazing thing to do. But hacking is something that you should always be doing at your own company. You pay outside people to look for your flaws. Super important. Also, within your corporation government, it's important to have bug bounties. Now, bug bounty, what that is says, hey, hackers, help us find flaws in our system. And if you do, we will thank you and we will pay you. What this is like crowdsourcing to the world. It's amazing. And more importantly, what it does is it lets the hacking world know that you want their help and that you're open to their help. And the hackers will treat you a lot differently just with this alone. So, you know, I guess the easiest way to be secure is just run faster than your friend. Have you guys heard this from the bear before? I spent a lot of time in Tahoe, but I already gave away the joke. But you know, how do you protect yourself from a bear? You just got to run faster than your friend. I think that's how you can think about security too, especially as a person. Just don't be the low-hanging fruit, right? Let them go on to someone else. It's like using a club on your car. A club can be hacked into, but usually they move on to the next car. So I've got some good tips for you for surviving DEF CON. You know, we bring a lot of people into DEF CON. It's just like the most hostile networking environment in the world. A lot of people don't even bring their computers there. And that's probably the easiest. But I've got a whole series of tips here. There's probably 22 at this point on the website. Each one of these tips was based off of an actual attack that happened at DEF CON every year. So these are real attacks and real tips. Some of them I've talked about earlier, which is cover your camera. Cover your interfacing camera. It's not that hard to do. Just use electrical tape and it won't gum it up. Also, a Faraday gauge is a great thing to use for your RFID passport and your credit cards. A Faraday cage is a metal cage in which wireless signals cannot get in or out. You could also make one of these. We teach the kids how to do it with just a tin foil inside a plastic baggie. Will work as well. Also, MiFi instead of Wi-Fi. I haven't been on a Wi-Fi network since I've been here. In fact, I never use one because Wi-Fi networks are very dangerous. Even if you're using a VPN, when you first get connected, we can take over your computer. So you really shouldn't be using an untrusted Wi-Fi. Especially in a place like this, it'd be a great target, I'd say. And then use some form of encrypted communications, especially for your personal communications. There's Wickr, there's Signal. You know, WhatsApp, I say you're giving your metadata to Facebook. So I'm not a big fan of that one so much. There's also some tips to communicating in a hostile environment. So this is when you're traveling to other countries. I think that this is something that's really important for you guys to think about. And so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys what a real hack looks like. How's that sound? And what we're going to do, I figured this is very relevant. We'll show you how to hack America's elections. at least the easiest way to mess with our election system. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the gift economy at DEF CON, because I think this is really important, which is your status at DEF CON is based off of how much you give back to society. So the rock stars there are the ones that give back the most. Some of the most famous ones are the Dark Tangent. He's the founder of DEF CON. Riverside, who taught us the election hack we're about to show you, he also runs an entire Capture the Flag village at DEF CON and Wall of Sheep, where if you've typed your password and your username and it's unencrypted, they'll show it on a wall for you, and you can see it. It's amazing. Deviant is also a total rock star at DEF CON. He runs the lockpicking village. There's a lockpicking village about half the size of this room where you can pick any kind of lock. And Chris Hagnaggy, I mentioned earlier, but he's the one that runs the social engineering village at DEF CON. And then we've also got some pretty famous kid hackers, too. Sci-Fi is the founder of Roots, and she was known for founding a new class of 0 days when she was only 9 years old, which she then worked with AT&T to fix across all mobile devices and hundreds of apps. Gadget Girl is 17 now. She's been coming to DEF CON for a long time, and she now runs an IoT and health hacking village and 3D printing village at DEF CON. Ponyboy is pretty famous this year because he's the 11-year-old boy that was able to change the votes in the election system within 11 minutes. Within 11 minutes. We had to explain what SQL in a database was. Let's start there. And he could still get there. And with that, I'd like to invite Hazel up onto stage, and she's going to show us what a real hack looks like. Hazel?
Hello everybody, hola a todos. Yo soy tan feliz que estar aquí con todos tú. And I'm here today to talk to you about SQL injection by Riverside and Aries Security.
And you learned this at Roots this year, right?
Yep. You know, the midterm elections just happened 2 days ago, but do we really know the election results yet? Election results are reported to public through Secretary of State websites. Secretary of State websites are vulnerable to SQL injection. What is SQL injection? SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Injection in this case stands for injecting a request into an existing request. Here's some important commands for SQL injection. Apostrophe, semicolon, hashtag union, and concat. Now that we learned that,
Here's a replica of the Secretary of State for Florida.
Yep. And remember, it's just a replica because if it was a real, what we're about to do right now would be illegal. Let's query columns and tables by you see that bottom text over at the edge of the screen. Let's put that into the search bar. Can you see it? The search bar is right on the top. And now we're at the database structure. Now we're supposed to get another text that's at the bottom again and put that into the search bar again, and now done. Now we're let's double Trump's votes by doing that, and done. We've done it. Now we are done, and Trump's votes is now doubled.
Crazy.
It's really fast and easy. So what did we learn today? Lesson 1, sanitize inputs, people. You shouldn't be able to put a command into a search bar. Lesson 2, online results are unofficial. Lesson 3, everything is vulnerable. The end, or is it just the beginning? I hope you become a hacker too. Here's some good websites you can go to start.
All right, thank you, everybody.